Hello and welcome to Todd and Shane's Cloudy Podcast number 417, recorded live Wednesday, January 9th, 2019. And for those of you that are watching the video or watching the live stream, you will notice that there is more Todd and less Shane this week. And it seems fitting as we've been going through the HTTP codes. 417 is expectation failed. I believe, though, that your expectation will be greater now because there is no Shane to louse up this podcast. Though my phone, I'm getting texts like a 12-year-old girl, but there'll be no Shane screwing things up. So it's just me today. So it's like a special episode. It's one of those things. Normally, folks have to pay, like on a Patreon site or something, for the extra special podcast episodes. I think one without Shane constitutes as a special one, but this one is just free of charge because I love you. Shane is teaching a PowerApps class right now, and I think it's just because he doesn't love you guys as much as I do that he's not here, but he is doing that. He should be back next week, and hopefully he won't be PowerAppsing on Wednesday morning next week like he is this week, but we keep him around. PowerApps is okay. For production notes, we will start out thanking the folks at SysKit. I promise sometime before the end of calendar year 2019, I will update that. I need to talk to them and make sure that's still the logo because they sent that to me about 6 years ago. So I need, before I commit money and all that, I need to make sure that's the right one. But they've got a lot of great tools. I'm going to talk later in the podcast about some reasons why you might use some of those tools. But always, if you're an administrator for Office 365 or SharePoint on-prem or whatever, go to syskit.com. They've got a lot of great tools. They are not just the SP.kit folks anymore. So go check them out. Stacy in the chat room is mentioning, it sounds like this could be called Todd Clint's podcast. It could. And that was one of those things. It was a solo effort for many years, and then Shane jumped in. And it still kept my name, and then Shane mentioned that perhaps since he was doing some of the work, he should get some credit too. So we did that, but I will, if he skips twice in a row, maybe I'll start using the old name. But I appreciate, this is a sign of an old school fan right here that remembers when it was just me, just all by myself. Topics, the first one I want to talk about, so we are in January now. It is January 9th, and that means we are in that happy time of the year, that month between Lori's birthday and my birthday where we do the charity drive. And if you're like me, you probably overdid it, probably starting at the end of October with Halloween candy, and then Thanksgiving, and then Christmas candy and Christmas meals and the other Christmas meal. I am feeling so fat and bloated and unattractive, and then doing the New Year's resolution thing. But there's one way to make yourself feel better about yourself, and that is to give to your favorite charity, whatever charity means the most to you. Give to that charity, and then brag to me and Lori about it. So that's what our birthday charity drive is. We've been doing this for the whole 10 years that the podcast has been in place now. The month leading up to my birthday, the month between Lori's birthday and mine, all we ask is that you go out and give to whatever charity is important to you. It's not a charity drive for me. It's not even a drive for charities that I care about, just whatever is important to you. And we've, over the years, seen a whole wide variety of great charities. But what we ask is that you give to your charity of choice, and then you tell us about it. So you can go to lorigowan.com, and there's a link for the TK charity link up there, and I'll put the link in the chat room, though I'm guessing the folks in the chat room have already done this if they're going to. But go to TK charity on Lori's site and just tell us who you are, how much you gave, and where you gave it to. And then on my birthday, we will kind of go through that and talk about it. It's just kind of the thing that I ask people to give a little bit back. I like to help people out over the year. And, give, and if you found any value of this podcast, the way that you can pay me back, the way you can say thanks is to give to your favorite charity. That's all I want. And so please do that. A couple of things to shout out. This is something that was not my idea. Not that I'm against it, I just can't take credit for it. Dan Usher and Lori Gowan thought of this again like 10 years ago. This has been all their baby, and it was a brilliant idea. I'm very proud of them for doing it. And so far this year, we are a little over halfway through the gift giving TK charity month. We are already at nearly $5,000. And over the years, as that number has climbed, I have talked about matching it and giving to other charities. However, how much you guys report to me, I will give to a charity. And I think we'll probably do that again this year. So if you would like to get double your money on a charity, give some money, let us know. And then at the end of when my birthday comes here in a couple of weeks, we'll see how much you guys tallied up. And then I'll find a charity here locally and I'll help them out as well. So this is a great thing. I'm fortunate to be in a spot where I can do this for folks and help out, and so I encourage you to do that as well. On to other, though less, benevolent topics. But yesterday was the second Tuesday of the month. It was January 8th, and so all the patches came out. And now we've got 4 sets of SharePoint patches on my site: 2016, 2019, 2013, 2010. I'm in the process of updating those now, but I'm getting those out. So check those out. I've been working with one customer, and they got compromised here a couple of weeks ago, and part of it is because they didn't have all the Windows patches on, and there's a thing. It's a big thing, but it was just a good reminder that put your patches on religiously, Windows patches, SharePoint patches, Office patches, all that kind of stuff, and also have good backups. We had some good backups with this customer. We were able to reduce our data loss. They weren't as tight as I would have hoped. So this was a good inflection point for us to look back at that and get our backup schedule a little bit better. But patches came out, so soon you'll be able to go to tk.com/SP2016 builds, 2019, all that kind of stuff, and get all your patches. Then I'm going through and patching all of my VMs now. I like to keep a VM on, the last 4 versions. Got my blog, which is Rockin' SharePoint 2010. But then I've got 2013, 2016, and 2019 VMs that I go through and patch every month and get that out to you guys. So go check those out. One thing that we've had in the notes here for a couple of weeks is something that Microsoft announced. They had this product called My Analytics, which is what they call this the fitness tracker for work. And basically what it does is it's a thing that is an Office 365, so it has access to all of your stuff, your email and your SharePoint and your OneDrive and all the things. And it basically tells you how much time you spend doing things at work, how much time you spend in meetings, how much time you spend working after hours, how much time you spend on email, and more importantly, how much time you spend focusing on work. And I think we all have an idea about that. We all feel overworked. We all think we don't have enough time. And this is going to give us the ability to put actual numbers to it. And this article that came out here, I guess it was just a week ago on the 7th, is that they are making My Analytics available for everybody. So it used to be for specific SKUs, and now they're rolling it out to everybody. And I have not enabled it yet. I just haven't gotten around to it. It kind of bolts into Outlook, and I've not installed that anywhere. But I'm curious about it because I've got some idea about how much I work and how busy I am, and this will put hard numbers to it. And so I think maybe some of my concerns will be justified and verified. Some of them will show that I'm just a little whiny and that I don't really do that much. But it's an interesting thing, and this is one of the really great pieces of value that Microsoft and other cloud providers can give by having a look at everything, your email, your meetings, and all that kind of stuff. And I'm curious what that will look like. This brings up one of these things, for information workers, for folks who are listening to this podcast and all that, we spend a lot of time sitting in front of our computers and sort of figuring out what time we're doing. Is going to be interesting stuff. And I've read some stuff on this lately. One of them is trying to keep in mind for myself the difference between being busy as opposed to being productive. So I feel busy all the time, but am I really being productive? Am I really getting work done as a consultant? Am I really spending that time helping customers and things like that? So this will help with that. The other thing is I was reading a blog post a while back about how one of the worst things for workers is our calendars, meeting requests and things like that, because we never block out time to do our job. We only ever use our calendars to block out times to not do our job. We only ever give priority to meetings and things like that. What we never do is block out, Tuesday morning, work on my job. And so then because of that, because our schedule ends up being the exact opposite of that, then we end up not being able to do our job as much. So this will give us some idea on how much time we spend focused on actually doing things. So if you've used this, I would be interested in hearing what your experience has been. Send me a tweet at Todd Clint or leave a comment on this blog or something. But I definitely plan on digging into this. Now I'm curious, I haven't done it yet, but I have multiple Office 365 accounts. My personal one, a one for work and things like that. And keeping the schedules and that in sync is a little tricky. I'm curious how this is going to bolt in, if it's going to be account specific. But I plan on revisiting this because it's got some interesting things in it. But again, curious what your feedback is if you've used the My Analytics or not. But again, it's going to be free for everybody. They're rolling it out this month, so you should be able to get in on that pretty quickly. This week, along with being Shane's PowerApps class, is also CES, the Consumer Electronics Show. This is something that for a gadget guy like me, a guy that within arm's reach right now, there is 2 cell phones, 3 tablets, 3 Raspberry Pis. As a guy like me, the Consumer Electronics Show, I would love to go to it once. I've heard that it's completely overwhelming and it's just exhausting, but I would love to go to it once just to see what it's like. But I do enjoy seeing the articles that are coming out about the stuff that comes out here. So for those of you that haven't followed the Consumer Electronics Show, for those of you that are able to look away from blinking blue LEDs, I'm jealous. That's a skill that I do not have. This is a time every year where gadget manufacturers, hardware and software manufacturers, show the press the things that they're planning on doing this year. So the things that you see announced for CES, some of them happen, some of them don't, but this is kind of what's coming up this year. And I've been poking around a little bit to kind of see. It just started here a couple days ago. But Shane and I talked, a year ago about cord cutting, something that both of us have jumped in with both feet. And I saw an article this morning about some of the cord cutting news that's coming out of CES. And there's a lot of great things coming out of there. It's a great time to be a cord cutter. It's only gotten better in the last year and a half. One of the things that I saw is more smart TVs are coming out, and they're getting smarter. They're doing more things. This is a discussion I see among my nerdy friends as to whether you should get a smart TV or not. And there's kind of 2 camps. There's the yes camp, and there's the no camp that says don't get a smart TV because whatever app is built into that TV, you're going to be tied to that, and then at some point it's not going to get updated anymore, and you're going to end up buying some sort of set-top box, a Roku, an Amazon Fire at some point, so why would you just not do that? And I think I fall in the middle a little bit, as is often the case with things like this for me. I mostly have smart TVs, and that's not because I've gone out and looked for smart TVs, but I've not gone out and looked for ones that don't have the smart stuff built in. So in my house, I've got a bunch of Vizio TVs, and they have varying, depending on when I bought it, what generation it is, have varying degrees of apps in them. We spend a lot of time using Netflix, and they all have Netflix clients in them. But again, depending on the generation of the TV, the Netflix client is good or not. They have different capabilities, different abilities to search, things like that. But the great news is they normally have like a button on the remote. So I've got a button on my TV remote that will take me right to Netflix, and then I can view my stuff from there. But I also have Roku boxes on all of my TVs, and that gives me the flexibility that I want to, if the Netflix client on Vizio gets stale or doesn't do whatever, I can always just pop over to the Roku and use that. And really, so then when you bring that up, people are like, well, it's very confusing and it costs extra. Why are you spending money on a smart TV if you're going to buy a Roku anyway? The Roku box that I bought was $80, less than $100. So really that's the only added expense. It's just $100. And I can buy that at any time. I could buy the smart TV, use the smart TV apps, and then a year later or 6 months later, if I decide I need more, I can plunk down another $100 and get the other apps. So that's worked out well for us. And the other thing is, while it is confusing, while there are 2 ways to do a lot of things, if you've got anybody that has problems with that, so we have babysitters and grandparents and stuff like that coming by, then just tell them to use whatever one's easiest. And they don't have to know about all the options. So my parents have no problems watching TV at our house, my wife's parents. So I'm excited to see new smart TVs coming out and seeing what they're doing, because I like seeing that functionality. It is funny, one of the dings that smart TVs and some of these set-top boxes getting is the reporting they do, the things that they report back to their manufacturers. And I've got a piece of hardware or software on my network called a Pi hole, which is software that runs on top of a Raspberry Pi that blocks tracking and blocks advertisers and things on your entire network. So it's not something that runs on your computer, but it runs on your network, so it blocks these things from all your computers and your tablets and your phones and your devices and all of those things. And what that shows me is all these different things. So I can see every time my Roku's try to report back as to what I'm viewing, I can see whether that's been blocked or not, my Vizio TVs and things like that. I have not gotten too paranoid about that, but every time I pop into my Pi-hole box to whitelist something, I had to do that a couple days ago, I see all those and it makes me wonder a little bit about that. I'm not too upset about it yet. Lori's saying in the chat room that, yep, when she has family come over, they have a tough time trying to figure out how to work things. Yeah, that's a thing. One thing that I will say, though, since we cut the cord a year and a half ago, is that we watch less TV. And because of that, how to watch TV, the complication of how to watch TV has not been as big of a deal as it could have been, I guess. Because of just being busy in life and all that, we don't watch as much TV, but I think that little added bit of effort that it takes to watch TV, like we can't just turn it on. Well, we can, but it's not as easy to just turn it on and have it running in the background. You have to figure out, am I going to Netflix? Am I going to PS View? Am I going to Plex or whatever? And picking things, since it takes, we just end up not having the TV on and not having it drone on in the background quite as much. And so then it doesn't end up being as much of an issue. So Eric, that's a good, Scott Hanselman has a list of productivity tips. I will put that in the notes, Laura, if you want to throw that in there, that would be great. I'll have that listed in there as well. But yeah, so my family ends up watching less TV than we did probably 3 years ago when we had a cable. But I don't think it's decreased my quality of life any. Like I don't miss it. I don't feel like I'm behind. We're a lot more selective about what we watch. I have some friends, Lori and Shane and all that. We talk about the different TV shows that we watch. And I remember talking with Lori a couple of days ago, and she was talking about getting current on a TV show. And I said, well, we haven't watched that yet. And she's like, well, why not? As if, wondering if I just didn't like that season or whatever. And I'm like, we just haven't gotten around to it. There have been so many other things that are more exciting, more interesting to us, and we just haven't watched through those yet. But we can be a lot more selective about what we watch. So I think, the cord cutting stuff is good. Another piece of news that I saw is there's more options for DVRs for over-the-air stuff. Two of the big names in that are Tableau and HD Home Run. They both make devices that you hook up to an antenna and get over-the-air things, and they're both adding more DVR functionality to their products, and that's important. So that is one of the things we do watch. We watch the local news. I live in a college town, so there's a lot of local sporting events, things like that. And having that ability to DVR shows and things like that is pretty handy. Right now, I do all of my over-the-air viewing on Plex. I have an HD Home Run tuner, and then Plex consumes that. And so I can watch live TV with that, and I can also set up recordings, and that's worked pretty well for us. Plex has the added benefit that you can have it pull commercials out of recordings. So we don't watch, other than news and sporting, we don't watch anything live. And when we do things like when we record The Amazing Race or whatever, after Plex has recorded it, then it goes through and pulls the commercials out. And we've had really good luck with that. So that's the platform that we're on now. It's not without some warts and things, but it's pretty good. So I'll have to check out the Tableau and the other stuff and see where that fits. That is one thing about cord cutting. Back when we had cable and satellite and all that, you just bought it, you paid for it, probably got stuck in some kind of a 2-year contract or 3-year contract. With cord cutting, the landscape changes pretty frequently. So I'm guessing every 6 months to a year, we tweak something, some service we're using, some piece of hardware we're using. And so it's good to see these articles come out and see what's new. But I'm looking forward to it. Speaking of DVRing and pausing, you all still have the opportunity to go to User Voice and vote up my suggestion on being able to pause OneDrive with PowerShell. I talked about this last week, I think, or a couple of weeks ago. I would like the ability to run a PowerShell commandlet that pauses my OneDrive sync, because I know that I'm going to be messing with a file that OneDrive is going to want to sync and going to want to lock. So you can go to onedrive.uservoice.com, search for PowerShell, or go to my blog. I've got a blog post on it, or I've linked it in the chat room. And if you think that's something you would like added to OneDrive, the ability to control syncing, pause and unpause, go out there, give it some votes. It doesn't cost you anything. but it does let the OneDrive product team know that this is something that we're interested in. So go out, vote early, vote often. I think you can vote every day, something like that. So go out there. I've seen a bunch of votes out there. I appreciate that. There's at least one comment. I know the product team looks at that stuff, so I appreciate you guys jumping out there. In more SharePoint news, I've been doing a lot of migrations. That seems to be a lot of the work that's going on in the SharePoint world right now. Because, customers are going to Office 365, there's not as much admin work to do. I'm not setting up, installing SharePoint as much as I used to. And a lot of the work that I'm doing is migrations. Migrations used to be a lot of the work that I did with on-prem software. That's not new, but that was always from, SharePoint 2007 to 2010, 2010 to 2013, and all of the, ado that went around that, all the work. And with as many people going to Office 365 as they are now, there's not as much of that because Office 365, for better or for worse, migrates underneath you, upgrades underneath you, so you don't have to do any of that. The migration work has shifted. Initially, a couple of years ago, there was a lot of migrations from on-prem SharePoint to SharePoint Online to Office 365. Those, at least for me, have tapered down significantly in the last year or so. I don't know if that's because, just the way things are working, but in my head, that's because there are a lot of people who are on-prem SharePoint, have looked at SharePoint Online, which has been out for many years now. SharePoint Online has finally gotten good enough for them to be not want to mess with on-prem SharePoint anymore. So they've done that. And I feel like we have kind of reached that critical mass. SharePoint Online continues to improve. Office 365 continues to improve. But I think we got over the hump on that bell curve where most of the functionality people needed to get from on-prem to the cloud is there. So the mass migration has shifted. And so those have really slowed down. But for me, the last year and a half has been a lot of migrations on doing either from file shares, people who had no SharePoint footprint whatsoever, to Office 365. And then recently, I've started having a couple of tenant-to-tenant migrations. So these are Office 365 tenants because of mergers or divestitures or whatever. We have content that is, sitting in Office 365, SharePoint Online, whatever, and then moving to a different tenant. I bring these up because I've done a lot of migrations over the years, and this requires different migration work. And part of that tool, part of the thing that we can do if we're doing for file shares is we can use any of the number of tools that are out there, ShareGate, whatever. Microsoft has been putting out the free Microsoft migration tool for a couple of years now. I think they announced it at the Ignite in 2017. This is a really great tool if you're doing on-prem to the cloud or file share to the cloud, and you're a small organization. It's probably not a good, if you're 100,000 people, probably not going to do it. If you're going to be doing hundreds of terabytes, probably not a good deal. But if you're a small to mid-sized company who never had SharePoint and just has file shares and wants help moving that to SharePoint Online or to OneDrive, this is a good tool for that. And this is one of these things where Microsoft, they need a tool like that. They need to have something to help people do it, but they don't want to do everything. They don't want to put their ISVs out of business. This tool does a great job of straddling that line where it is enough, but they keep adding more functionality to it. So recently they've added some new functionality. I think it's on version 3 now. They've added the ability to migrate the stuff into Teams, which is where Microsoft is focusing now. So check that out. If you've looked at the SharePoint migration tool, but haven't this year, and I get that we're 9 days into the year, but definitely check that out. They keep adding things. It's been a great tool. And this really helps with some of the migration stuff. Now it only does on-prem to Office 365 and only specific versions of on-prem SharePoint. So the whole doing migrations from tenant to tenant, that has been interesting. There are not a lot of great tools out there for that. And I'm finding a lot of really weird issues, things that were never a problem moving from on-prem SharePoint to Office 365 or file shares. So one of the things is when you're moving on-prem SharePoint to SharePoint Online, the tools that do that understand you're going SharePoint to SharePoint-ish, and they try to map everything up, and everything seems to come across. When you're doing file shares to Office 365, there's so much less data. There are so many less things to work with. You've got the file name, you've got the data itself, the Word document or whatever, you've got some metadata, but so very little. Basically, created date, modified date is really about it. Permissions don't normally come across. There's no metadata. There's no versions. There's no workflows. There's nothing like that. So those are pretty easy. But when you do the tenant to tenant ones, you've got all of the richness behind Office 365. And I've been helping one customer do a tenant-to-tenant migration, and I've been slinging a lot of PowerShell because there's just all these little areas where the migration tools and the migration processes don't completely catch everything that goes from one tenant to another. And it's been sort of fun trying to find those holes. The patterns and practices PowerShell has been a godsend. I mean, it has fixed all these things that I have had to do, but it's been great with this customer. It's a big customer, so they don't have a small problem that is like 3 things. They have a problem that is huge. And so it becomes very difficult for somebody to say, okay, these documents don't have the right created date, or they don't have the right modified user or whatever. The scale when they experience problems is not something that somebody just wants to go in and click it, because it's not 3 or 4 things. It's hundreds or thousands. So then I come in with some PowerShell and button all that up, and it's been very, very productive. So I've been watching a lot of my friends in Twitter that do the same kind of work that I do, and they're doing the same kinds of migrations. So I almost feel like I need to get a hold of some of them, kind of do some interviews, and then write a blog post on what people should know about the state of migrations in 2019, and what things we've learned migrating from file shares, what things we've learned migrating from tenant to tenant. But it's been very good. And I see some talk in the chat room. Eric's talking about how he's mostly doing migrations. It's interesting, and it also makes me wonder what's going to be next. Like at some point we will have all the file shares that are in Office 365 that are going. We'll see. The tenant-to-tenant stuff will keep up because companies will continue to merge and all that. But it's been interesting. It's been new skills. It's been new problems. I've really enjoyed it. So it's good stuff, and I get to play with PowerShell a lot. So I'm really enjoying that. Finally, one of the things, this is an interesting one for me because I'm excited, I'm not excited, I don't know how to feel about this. I'm not a developer, and I eschew any descriptions of me that I'm a developer, because I'm not a developer. I'm not very good at it. But I do enjoy PowerShell a lot. And I have been writing PowerShell now for nearly 10 years, and so there's version control issues, and I write a lot of PowerShell that I should share with people. And one of the tools that people use for that is GitHub. So a lot of people have been on me that I should have some stuff in GitHub. People like Jeff Hicks have challenged me to publish more of my PowerShell. There's a whole big thing about that, I just don't feel like any of my PowerShell is good enough to be published, but yet I know that it helps people anyway. There are many places on the internet to do that. GitHub was one of them. And GitHub is a full-scale enterprise developer-y thing. It's way more than I needed for the things that I was going to do. But I did get a free GitHub account just so I could play with it a little bit. And plus I use it to look at other GitHub projects. With the GitHub free account, one of the things that you could not do is have a private repository. Any code that you put up on GitHub, any PowerShell, any C#, any of that thing, you could use all the version tools and all that stuff, but you couldn't make it private. If you put it up there, anybody could see it. And again, my PowerShell is not great, so I would be very careful about what I put up there, and any of my working stuff I would not put up there because it just wasn't very good. I didn't want people to see it. So I didn't use GitHub a lot. And then a year or so ago, Microsoft bought GitHub, and everybody was talking about how it was going to be horrible. Microsoft was going to ruin it, and a bunch of people migrated off to all these other different platforms. This year, Microsoft made an announcement. One of the ways that they're ruining GitHub is they are allowing free, unlimited private repositories. So now folks like me that have a free GitHub account, I can create this private repository, put my working PowerShell in there, and then as I see it, I'm going, as I get it ready to share, I can go ahead and make it public, things like that. So this has definitely made me look at GitHub a little more. Again, I've got a lot of PowerShell modules that I use, and I've got them in OneDrive right now, and I've got a process I use when I log into customers' machines to pull them down. I need to evaluate that a little bit and see if GitHub is a better place for that. And then that will make it easier for me to share the things that I do. Again, I'm very self-conscious about it because I just don't think my PowerShell is that good. But I know that when people can read through my horrible PowerShell, that gives them ideas on how to do things that they're doing. So I need to get over that a little bit. Hopefully with this free GitHub thing, that will be the thing that does it. And again, Jeff Hicks, every time I ask him for help and I write some stuff, he's like, "You're going to share this, right? You're going to put it out on GitHub." And I'm like, I'll blog it. I'll share it. I'm not trying to hoard it, but it's so bad. I don't want to be a bad influence on anybody. But hopefully, so this is a good thing. But again, I think the stories of Microsoft ruining GitHub are greatly exaggerated. I think they're doing a good job. Eric in the chat room is talking about how he's often amazed that his terrible stuff has been very helpful to his junior folks because it's kind of given them the idea on how to get over hurdles. That's absolutely true. And I know logically that even my worst PowerShell out there helps somebody, just gives them that little nudge that they need to figure out their problem. But I just hate putting bad code out there and not being responsible with that. Okay, so we're reaching the shameless self-promotion again this week. Shane is doing his PowerApps and Flow training, which is going on right now, so you kind of don't want to sign up for that. But I don't know if he's going to have that available for recording or anything, but I'll put the link in the chat just the same. So go to PowerApps911.com/training and see what he's got out there for this week and next week and all of that. Next week, I'm going to be speaking of my friend Eric in the chat room. I'm going to be remotely presenting a session on PowerShell for his user group, the Fox Valley SharePoint user group. So I'll be doing that next week. Very excited about that. SP TechCon is coming up. That's February 10th through the 13th. I'll be down there. Shane will be down there. We're doing some sessions together. We're doing an all-day thing on Sunday. I've already made my flights. I've already made my hotel, which for any of you that have ever dealt with me with travel, making that stuff a month out is insane. Like I never do that, but I've got it. I'm there. So that is February 10th. Go to sptechcon.com and sign up for that. Then in March is like the busiest month I've ever had. I can't believe all the stuff going on in March. March 11th, I'm going to be speaking at the Kansas City SharePoint user group, and I think I'm going to be doing a talk on Office 365 groups there, and that one will be in person. So Kansas City is just 3 hours south of me, and they have this over the lunchtime, so this is going to be perfect. I'm going to get up in the morning, drive down to Kansas City, and do that. So if you're in the Kansas City area, sign up for that. That's March 11th. I think it's a Tuesday. I forget. I'm going to be talking about groups there. March 14th and 15th, the North American Collaboration Summit in Branson. We'll all be there. Shane will be there. I'll be there. Lori will be there. What a great little show. It's easy to make fun of Branson, but it's just a really great conference. And Mark Rackley puts on a tremendous show. I would really like to mock going to Branson for a technical conference, but having been there before, I can't do it. He just puts on a great show. So if you're in that part of the country, the Midwest, whatever part of the country that is, think about going to the North American Collaboration Summit, and you can find out all about that by going to the website, collabsummit.org. Great conference. Can't say enough good things about it. I'll be there for several days doing that. And then Shane and I will be doing the SharePoint Saturday in Omaha, Nebraska on March 30th. That's coming up. And I'm not sure what I'm speaking on or what Shane's doing the keynote, but I don't know what else. But we'll be there in person for that. Great event, great community. Glad that they've let me come over and talk to them a couple times. SharePoint Saturday, Omaha. So sign up for that. Would love to see you there. And then kind of the big dog, the SharePoint conference in May 21st through the 23rd in Las Vegas at the MGM Grand again. So everybody's going to be there. I would list the people that are going to be there, but if there's somebody and they do SharePoint or Office 365, that's the folks that you're gonna see there. It's going to be a great conference. So I'm very excited about that one. So it's been busy, and I've got some other stuff going on later in the year that we haven't got nailed down yet, but it's going to be a great time. So thanks to everybody in the chat room. I'm going to stick around for a while. Since we don't have to worry about Shane hogging all the mic time, today's podcast was reasonably timed, about 30 minutes. So that's the way things ought to go. As always, if you want to reach out to us, I'm at Todd Clint on Twitter. Shane is at Shane's Cows. You can email me, todd@toddclint.com. Email him, Shane, at PowerApps911.com. Love to hear from you. Love your feedback. If you've got topics you want to hear about, if you want us to promote your event, your user group or whatever, give us a shout. If you want us to speak there, by all means, give us a shout. We would love to help out. We like to help the community, so we appreciate those opportunities. So thanks everybody. Again, chat room, I'm going to stick around for a while. Everybody else, I will see you next week.